So, hello everyone coming in, pouring into the cafe. Good to see you. I'm suffering a little bit, so I hope my voice is going to last the distance. It's deteriorated in the last half hour, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, good to see you all here. Welcome to the 50th EOcafe. I mean, it's quite incredible. We started this when the lockdown first hit back in April 2020, and we thought it was a nice way to try to get everyone to have the opportunity to stay in touch. But if you'd asked me then, I would never have foreseen I'd still be here in 2 years later and 50 EOcafes later. So that's quite extraordinary. In that time, I've talked with 89 different guests. We've had over 6,500 registrants. And as much as I try to take a Thursday off, Natasha won't let me. So you've only ever had one host, and you deserve better than that. And maybe we can do something about it. But I have to persuade Natasha first. So, usual rules, keep your microphones off unless I ask you to join. And I hope you will join in asking questions of our guest. You're very welcome to keep cameras on. It's nice to see you. And if you have questions, please put them into the chat so that we can see them coming up. But I would ask you to ask the question yourself in any case. So I'm really pleased today to welcome Simonetta Kelly. Simonetta is the director of EO in ESA, based in Ezrin, and has been fulfilling this role since the 1st of January this year. However, Simonetta's been in ESA for many years, and I was trying to recall when we would first have met. I suspect it's about 20 years ago. I think it was a bit after Baveno, but I'm not certain whether it was, but it was about that time anyway. Simonetta, welcome to the EOcafe. Perhaps you'd like just to kick off and say a few words about yourself and how you've got to be director of EO at ESA.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon to all of you. Yes, over 20 years we know each other, and I've been in ESA over 30 years, about 3 decades, a long journey. I started previously in the European Commission for 1 year after a degree in international law and international telecommunication satellite law with a thesis at the UN. And then I moved to the Commission where I was working on the audiovisual dossiers, and a little bit by chance, but still very interested in the telecommunication satellite domain, I moved to ESA in '88. And I thought I would stay there about a year and then go back to Brussels. It never happened. I really enjoyed the work at the agency, and over these 30 years I had the chance to have jobs in different sectors, both on the corporate side of the agency, where I was involved in international relations, in the EU relations, but also on strategy and in the field of communication. And then in the last 15 years in Earth observation. So it came quite naturally after quite a few years as a right arm of the director to apply for the position. And of course, it's not easy to get this type of jobs, but I got the privilege and the honor, I would say, to start as a director of Earth observation in January this year, and also as head of the site in Ezrin, which is the ESA establishment in Italy. So I was very lucky in my career. I consider myself to have had a very interesting journey. I'm not an engineer by degree and by academic background. I start with international relations and law, but I had the privilege to work many years with engineers, with scientists, with physicians, with people who really are experts in the domain, and also to acquire some expertise working with them in the field of space. And I think today space is becoming more and more a sector where you need a diversity of backgrounds, and where also the relevance of international collaboration, also the relevance of knowing dossiers like those managed by the European Union, it's important for what we do in our daily job, and even more possibly in Earth observation and environment and climate.
Very definitely. And of course, you're surrounded by experts in Ezrin, so you have plenty of support. I'm mindful also you say you started with the Commission. Of course, you in that respect, like your predecessor, who was moved on to be the DG, also started in the Commission. So who knows? ESA, let me just say a few words for, I mean, I think most people on the call will know about ESA, but we do try to use this as an opportunity to inform people about the institutional relationships in Europe. So, I mean, ESA, your primary role is to push the frontiers of European space technology, space science and technology, and ensure that the right technology is available for the European programs. Of course, you're also approaching the 50th anniversary, like in 2 years' time, 2025. The main focus is on satellites and launchers. Only about 1 to 2% of the ESA budget, I think, goes on downstream applications on how satellites are used, which of course is the interest of most of our constituency. But I can't emphasize how important that is to the sector in helping companies to develop the technology, develop their businesses and develop their business models. And over the years, there's been fantastic support from ESA in that respect. And we've built up quite a good relationship in that time. Now, every 3 years, or around 3 years at least, you have the ministerial, where the ministers in the member countries of ESA come together to approve the next program proposals, most importantly, the budget to implement it. This is a really heavy process, I know, and a lot of the negotiation around which countries want to join which programs, at least for the optional programs. So there's mandatory programs and optional programs. And I think I'm right in saying that Earth observation mainly comes under the optional activities, especially where we're supporting applications. So, Simonetta, have I got that? I've skipped a few steps along the line there, but is that broadly correct, or what can you add to that?
Maybe just to add to that, or to confirm what you said, today ESA has 22 member states. It's not the same member states of the Union. We have not a one-to-one membership, as we have Norway, Switzerland, in ESA, also the UK, and we have a very close collaborative arrangement with Canada, which is basically almost assimilated to being a member states of the agency. We have about a budget of 7 billion per year. And currently we have a ministerial plan in 10 days, which is the regular cycle of decision-making process of the agency that we have every 3 years to guarantee a budget continuity, decision on key programs, strategic relevant decisions for normally the next 3 years. We have a DG proposal on the table these days for the programs overall of the agency. You mentioned infrastructure, launchers, space science, of course, application with navigation, telecommunication, and Earth observation, which are all on the table for ministers for decision, as well as those decisions related to exploration, Mars, or the continuation of the space station. And all of that makes a package, a current one presented to ministers, which is quite ambitious, is of the order of 18 billion. And out of that, basically, currently the proposal for Earth observation programs, which today in the agency's budgets is of the order of 24% of the agency's budget overall in terms of annual percentage, is of the order of 3 billion. So an ambitious proposal on table for minister. I would say a multi-facet proposals with a number of programmatic elements which are on the table for the ministers, but all those elements either represent continuity in terms of activities compared to the previous ministerial, so in terms of also programs that we initiated and we need to continue for development or for exploitation, or programs which are new and they represent somehow new needs in terms of science or user requirements, or new needs in terms of supporting the priorities of the agency. And there I think, for example, of our general corporate priorities, which involve strengthening relation with the European Union, they involve need to support commercial initiatives, and that I think is very relevant for the context of ERSC. We are trying to have as one of the 5 priorities a further development and support of the commercial sector, which is part of the DNA of the agency anyway, to support the commercial competitiveness of our industry. So the proposals that we have on the table are all supporting, I would say, international, global challenges, but also European priority topics and local and national priorities. Just to mention some, We have proposals which are really fitting to the SDGs priority of the United Nations launched in 2015. Those priorities of SDGs involve a lot of thematics like that of water management, resources, for example, climate change, risk management, food security, which are very relevant and can be really supported by space and Earth observation. On the other hand, you have European priorities, the Green Deal, Fit to 55, the Farm to Fork, with all the legislation associated to that, which imply and involve the need to use solutions coming from Earth observation, from technologies in that field, and also the exploitation at best of Earth observation data. And last but not least, in the current climate crisis, and COP27 is just running now in Egypt these days, we have all the activities which are related to the need to support the climate crisis with solutions coming from space. We already have programs in the agency, and we hope to enhance those activities at the ministerial with decision by ministers related to the climate variables, which are the indicators associated to climate change, like sea level rise or ice melting. So overall, the package that we present to ministers is responding to global needs, European needs, and priorities that we all have. At the same time, I think it's a package that it's very important in terms of showing and demonstrating the relevance of space, the strategic one, today in the current geopolitical context. We have since February a geopolitical context which is totally different from when we started to prepare this ministerial. We started about a year and a half ago. Normally you have cycles of preparation of the ministerials which last about 2 years. So we started as usual 2 years ago, but then very few months ago in February, we were in a completely different context. And the context is not only impacting the proposals and what we present to ministers in terms of a stronger need, I would say, for technology autonomy in the field of space, including in Earth observation. So some of those proposals really confirm the ambition of Europe of having an autonomy in terms of EO technologies and technologies which have can guarantee a strategic autonomy of the sector. And on the other hand, of course, we have a few difficulties associated to the current geopolitical situation. We have a situation of affordability of countries, which is connected to the current geopolitical situation and the energy crisis, which possibly can impact, and we're still very much debating with member states all these issues of affordability, because some countries had started to put the budgets together to present to ministers for subscription to the programs months ago, and now the impact on the world is different. So we are having very close interaction and also very close look together with our member states at the potential impact of inflation on the current situation and the program. But I think overall the programs that we present are very coherent, are very consistent in terms of space solutions, technology solutions, and applications, and also very important and relevant for a sector like yours. Your sector is the sector of the services, of the value added. It's a sector that has certainly very strong economic potential and good trends in the last few years, with about 7 to 10% increase in our economic studies, supporting the proposals we have on the table for ministers. So very strong return for investment for those countries that will decide to contribute. And that's the overall picture I like to say. And ESA is doing that in terms, of course, also looking at the economic benefits for the countries, looking also at supporting, and in the context of EO, the evolution of the sector has been pretty dramatic. We've passed from a sector which was traditionally only an institutional one to a sector which now is also dominated and very much more increasingly by the private initiatives, by new constellations, by new private actors coming in the field. We have to look into that when we present proposals. We need to integrate that element of private sector into the EO context. And the last element that we've taken into account for preparing those proposals is the need to make sure that today that we have big volumes of Earth observation data available, 300 terabytes per day of Sentinel data available, we do integrate the technologies coming from the digital world into our traditional Earth observation programs. And that's the overall philosophy and approach that we've taken in preparing the proposals for the ministerial.
Well, you covered a massive amount of ground there. Let me just take you back a little bit, because you talk about the geopolitical context, the strategic context, and I can see two ways in which that's driving things. One, the need for more surveillance capacity, and the more better and certainly more capacity. And the other, of course, is the pressure on finances, which is resulting as a result of that context, and putting pressure on most countries' budgets. So, how do you think that's going to play out in the ministerial?
Well, we have proposals which, like Future EO, which allow to use data from the available satellites to support some of those civil security related activities. I just think, for example, of what we were doing in the last year for Future EO for what we call technically Block 4 is the field which is relevant for your community. It's the application sector field. We were doing already survey of the whole Ukrainian country, looking at the crop monitoring aspects, looking at agriculture monitoring, because we overall support the common agriculture policy with tools in terms of statistics, also crop classification, forecast of agriculture estimates, and that we were doing also for Ukraine in the last year. So what we did this year, when the perspectives of a strong reduction in terms of crop production was coming up from OECD, between 20 and 80% potential reduction for the year in terms of yield production, we have worked with satellite data, particularly with data from Sentinel-2, looking at the type of estimates we could have, and we estimated a reduction potentially of 17% of yield production over 6 months. And this was not only due to the geopolitical context, it was also due to the drought situation in the region and also to reduction of pesticides. Those type of instruments, those type of demonstration activities, of course, have a very strong potential in terms of supporting context of security delicate situation like the current one. And this is just an example. We do use also Earth observation data, and there again, if Future EO is funded as a program at the Ministerial, there's a lot of potential to do more in areas like, for example, monitoring border control and things like that. So certainly for industry, this is very relevant. I was in a workshop 2 days ago in ESTEC with various companies and many industries from Europe on civil security from space, together with my colleagues from telecommunication. And we were just highlighting the potential role that ESA overall can have in the future, not just the Earth observation program in terms of supporting those civil security requirements, and the need for teaming up there with the industry that can really support and provide solution in that respect. And we have in Earth observation a long tradition of working with institutional partners like EMSA, the Satellite Center in Torrejon, NATO, UNDCR, and much more, Frontex, and many more. Sure.
You've mentioned a couple of times Future EO there, and you mentioned the Block 4, which is relevant in the program. Can you say a little bit more about Future EO, how it's organized and what people should be looking for?
Yes, Future EO this time is the bulk of what we present to Minister, is I would say the trunk of what we call the tree of the variety of the proposals that we have on the table. Future EO, it's a program which is an envelope program that has various components. On one side is a program that provides for the preparation of future operational programs, like the meteorological one or the Copernicus one. So in that program, you have studies and preparatory activities, also in terms of technology, to prepare for future operational program. But at the same time, you have in that program the development of science missions. Those are called Explorer missions that look at precise, targeted objectives, scientific objectives. Just to mention some which are already up and running, you have missions like Cryosat, which look at the ice thickness, mission like SMOS, which looked in the past, and they're still looking at soil moisture, that come out of that program. And we have the plan to do many more missions, to develop a mission called Harmony, which will look at the deformation of land and ocean, and which hopefully will be implemented if we have the program subscribed. But not only that, we have have a mission inside Futurio called NGGM Gravity, which is what we call a mission of opportunity. It's a mission that we hope to develop in Europe, but in very strong collaboration with the US. They have a pair of satellites that should be flying, which then will fly in some sort of collaboration with some hardware exchange. That's also part of Futurio in terms of plans, and also Scout, which are small missions, very relevant for startups, companies also who are not the traditional big players in the space scenario, because those satellite missions are 30 million missions to be developed in 3 years with a science objective, and very interesting also for countries which are newcomers in this context. And then apart from that, the part which I think is the most relevant for the context of ERSC is what we call Block 4. This is basically one of the components of the Futurio program. It has an element called Earth Science for Society, and the objective of that element is to stimulate new leading edge pre-commercial services. It's also to pioneer ICT, and it means that there what we do is we look at dedicated user requirements in science, but also in institutional user community, and we develop demonstration activities, application activities, no matter if it's to demonstrate the value of Earth observation, to support management of water management resources, deforestation monitoring, planning of rural areas, control of pipelines and leakages there. So you can do a lot of demonstration application, which of course we do as a demo phase with the companies, but then they have a potential to become fully commercial and exploited commercially in terms of services and application by the companies. And that's really also one of the success story that we have developed with many of the actors, members of ERSC, because many of your members have been working in the past on this type of activities with the agencies, developing demonstration activities on a research basis, but also activities which then they could use and developed in terms of commercially developed activities. And that's the big potential also of this program, which also has a component which is called a Sentinel user preparation. And the Sentinel user preparation component of that program is meant to prepare the exploitation of the data coming from the future Sentinel mission, from the expansion mission. And there again, I think a strong potential for members of ERSC to look at validation and preparation also of future data that are going to be available from the missions which we are developing.
This is very embarrassing. I've got somebody just coming to the front door. I can see them parked outside and through the window. I think it will be very, very quick. I wanted to ask about InCubed. A lot of the member companies are involved in InCubed, and I think we hope that it will continue. So maybe you can just say a little bit about the future of InCubed while I go and Hudson?
Yes, of course. So InCubed, it's a new scheme that we started a few years ago at the last ministerial. It's actually something that we started after a visit to the Silicon Valley, where we went to look and check what were the models and the success models in the US for supporting new commercial actor and initiatives. And so what we did is we assessed the fact that in Europe, you needed not only better access to venture capital in terms of support from the agency. You need to validate the technologies and the service and the products which are available potentially from new commercial actors. And you need to have opening of the commercial sector and technical advice, and you needed faster processes. So InCubed was born from all that assessment, which we did coming back a few years ago from Silicon Valley. We started a PhilLab, which is an innovation laboratory, which is hosted at ESRIN, but it serves, of course, all member states of ESA. And we started the InCubed program, which is a scalable program. It's a program where if you have a good idea, if you have an idea which is both on the upstream sector, but also on the downstream sector, which I think is more relevant here in this context, you can submit it. and you have to get a sort of a support letter from your delegation and the related money. And it's a co-funding mechanism, but with variable co-funding depending to the level of startup that you are, or if you are a research institute, in some case you get more money than just the 50%. But it's a model which for us was relatively new in the sense that we never had co-funding before. It's proven to be a very successful model also in the field of Earth observation for validating technologies on one side, but also validating service development. And I think this time at the Ministerial, we have what we call InCube 2. So it's the next step of InCube, which I'm sure, having checked with a few member states, is going to be, again, quite a success program in terms of subscriptions, because there are lots of, I think, potential newcomers to the sector, but also relatively newcomers to the sector that can benefit of that. And that scheme seems to be extremely interesting for supporting commercial in the field of Earth observation.
And I missed the link by rushing off, but you were talking about the opportunity to commercialize based on some of the Explorer programs, the science programs. So
yeah, what we have done in the agency overall, as I said, we have one of the priorities is commercialization. How do we implement that priority in the specific sector of Earth observation? We do it via different ways. On one side, we test and validate new technologies, and we support actors that can do that with commercial perspective. We do that, of course, via InCubed, but we also have a few other means. One is, of course, the technology development activities that you have also inside Future can help in that respect. The other system is the anchor tenancy scheme. So we have just recently kicked off, together with the Commission, what we call the Copernicus Contributing Mission Dynamic Purchasing System approach, which means that the budgets that the European Commission is delegating to the agency to spend on what the Copernicus Contributing Mission, so complementary missions to the traditional Sentinel satellites. Those satellite data and the data providers should respond to those calls, and the call just started. We had just the first round of what we call step one, phase one. We're going to kick off in a few days, step two. And the aim is basically to spend the money we have on data procurement and complementary Copernicus mission from new constellation, new data available on the market to support commercial activities. So the anchor tenancy scheme, it's associated to the development that ESA has done jointly with the Commission of a procurement scheme approach, which is new, it's more agile, is faster, and hopefully will be better fit to support new commercial initiatives. So on top of the InCubed, you have anchor tenancy schemes. And of course, all these elements combined with the fact that we are trying in ESA to speed up generally procurement processes, and combined to the fact that I'm teaming up very much forces with my colleague Geraldine Najak, who is the Director for Industrial Policy in ESA, to try and grant help in terms of support to access to venture capital to new startups. This is something that's relatively new in the ESA context, and we're working very hard on all these measures to support commercial and commercialization in general.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the DPS is a great scheme, and it's complex. We talked about it previously. Yes. And will be a challenge, but I think if it can be really made to work, it will be a big step forward. Just an invitation to everybody. Don't forget, if you wish to ask a question, please put it into the chat, and we're coming to the point when I'll be looking for questions. But Simonetta, you anticipated my next question there, because I was going to move on to the DPS and how that was going to work. You made reference there to step one and step two. I confess I'm not familiar with what step one and step two is, so I guess there are others there who are not available either, are not aware either. Can you just, is it possible just to say a little bit more what those are?
Yeah, it's quite technical, in fact, but we had an industry day a few weeks ago, jointly with the Commission, where over 200 representatives from industries attended. And we basically did what we call step one, which is a crash action to try and have a tendering process in place and some contracts, initial ones, with data providers organized for early January next year. Because as you know, Commissioner Breton had announced in February in Toulouse his ambition to support a new startup to integrate this new dimension to the traditional one of the sentinels of an evolution of Copernicus, which takes into account new initiatives in that respect. So we had what we call, I would say, a step one, but it's a crash action to start integrating the DPS criteria and elements into the ESA Star traditional procurement process and do a first call, which we did. We are currently selecting the proposals. I cannot disclose how many proposals and how they are, but we plan to do that and finalize first contracts by early next year. Meantime, we're refining the system and we are consolidating it, and we're sort of doing the final setup, which is a step two, with also an adjustment of the criteria, openness also beyond the 5 thematics that we had initially selected. So all of that it's in progress, but step one and step two are basically elements of how we're going about doing a step approach for, in the end, getting a very efficient procurement system to buy data and purchase data for Copernicus contributing missions.
It all sounds very compressed. Step one is about establishing the sort of framework conditions, so the companies which can be eligible to.
We have no. Step one is about doing some tendering and already selecting some contracts, and we have some criteria. Among the criteria, of course, you have some criteria which are related to the type of connotation of the company. Is it European and European? I mean, some of the traditional criteria which are used in ESA and the Commission. So nothing new invented there.
Okay. So in January, you're expecting to place contracts for data supply.
The first ones, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then this will sort of rinse and repeat in the future. So
absolutely, yes. We also try to have contracts which span over more years, because one of the comments we got in terms of feedback from companies is that they want to have a medium long-term perspective of potential business. So what's really relevant is not to have contracts which give the perspective of a business of just one single year, but we try to have contracts which cover a period of more than 1 year there.
Yeah, and does that work for companies which have plans to put satellites in space but are not yet operational, or is that sort of another step?
I think that's the second step. Someone is talking. Yeah. Okay. And I would say that's more. I would say that's more the second step in that context.
Okay. Because I mean, certainly, I think there's a big need to try to help some of these those with new ideas to come forward. Much as
but as I said, the second step is coming now. I mean, it's December, so it won't be long. Whoever didn't have a chance in the first one will have a chance in the second one.
Okay,
let's put it this way.
That sounds good. But talking about other part of. We've talked a little bit about Copernicus, but I imagine we can talk more, and I would have thought there would be questions about that. But within the first phase of the GMES program, as it was then, we had the GMES service elements as a way of helping to prepare not just industry but Europe broadly. But of course, we were interested in the industrial component to that, to develop new services based on the anticipated data once it was flowing. And now we move towards second generation Copernicus, Copernicus 2.0, and the extension missions that will follow for that. And part of the program is a further preparation program, I believe. Can you say a little bit more about that? What opportunities there are for companies in relation to future Copernicus data?
Yeah, I think first component is the SUP, the Sentinel User Preparation, which is inside Future Europe. There's a budget of about 40 million there, which is certainly relevant to develop new application and new activities related to the exploitation of the data coming from the future mission. Then, of course, you have everything that's related to demonstration and application actions overall. So that's more widely, generally speaking, in the science for society element, that's clear. And then, of course, you have everything that is the support to the services. ESA is coordinating the data buy in support of the services, and there, of course, the Commission is in the lead for managing those services, but there is a lot of potential in the, I would say, promoting the integration of new data sources to support those services. And the services, as you know, are not static, they evolve in terms of user requirements. So there was a very strong work done jointly, actually led by the Commission, on the user requirements for the future expansion missions, and those were taken into account, those user requirements, in the definition of the expansion missions. And also currently we're working very closely hand in hand in the development of what we call the long-term scenario, which is a medium long-term vision of where Copernicus should evolve and how the program should evolve. That long-term scenario has on one side the elements of what satellites are needed, when, at what time, how much do they cost, and what type of instruments they will have on board. Also, what satellites we need to guarantee in terms of continuity of data. And that's exactly what the Ministerial this time is about of ESA. We're trying to put on the table for Minister a decision of about 600 million, which is related to Sentinel-1 next generation. So the continuity in terms of next generation of Sentinel-1, which is a satellite that works very well actually when Sentinel-1B failed this summer and it was ended its lifetime. Everybody in terms of users was missing the data from 1B, and we are trying now to launch Sentinel-1C as fast as possible to be sure that those requirements are met. And then we have also Sentinel-3 next generation on the table. So the continuity of what exists. And there, not only there's going to be big chances in terms of developing hardware, developing new missions, building the satellites, but of course also supporting the exploitation of the data coming from that. And not only we do CalVal activities in that context in ESA, but we also prepare the terrain with everything that is the demonstration of the exploitation of the data.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I mean, again, this is an important element of the future in order to be preparation. So we fully support that. A general question around the industry and ERSC. You know, we've been working together for many years now. Is there more that we can be doing to support you in your mission, and in doing so support the industry as well? But is there more that we can be doing?
I think for ESA, the interaction with the industry is essential. Also in the preparation of the Ministerial, we had a workshop in April, which you supported, ERSC, but also Eurospace, because we need a dialogue with industry overall, and also industry of the value-added, the service sector, very much to understand what are your needs, how we can support you, and also your competitiveness. And this dialogue is exactly what is happening regularly with you, ERSC, because we have twice a year interaction, we do studies together, we organize workshops, but specifically when we are preparing proposals for the Ministerial, and that I must say was extremely useful, this interaction with association like yours becomes essential, because we cannot invent, and we're an executive, not only we need to translate the desiderata of our member states, but we need also to have those desiderata fit into proposals that then match interests of the industry, because if there is not an industry interest, we will never get those activities funded. And also if there is not, I would say, an industry and an economic potential of what we present, I mean, countries will not invest. So I must say, I find the relation with association like yours, but not only yours, in general with the industrial sector, very healthy in the sense that it's quite a win-win relation there. And in fact, I was attending the industry workshop organized at ESTEC by ESA with over 2,000 people, with all the programs of ESA presented. And that interaction with industry is essential to understand where we're going in terms of needs for technology, which are the strategic elements to develop in terms of, important technologies to develop, what can we buy, where can we be autonomous, where cannot we, what is the potential in terms of market, what is the sector that's going to evolve and how in the next few years. So you know much more than we know the market, and that's really something that we can benefit from, and this interaction, and also the support we got from you recently with the strong support statements that we got can certainly help in that respect. We can always do more. I'm sure we can find ways to do more, but already the interaction today I find personally quite fruitful, both sides, also on your end, I assume, but I won't comment on your end, of course.
Oh, no, very, very, very much so from our end. And, I mean, we'll obviously maintain that dialogue, and where we can do more, we're certainly ready to do so. I just want to wind back to the DPS, because I've had a question put to me that within the DPS scheme, there's a limitation on the age of companies that are eligible to 15 years.
Yeah.
And this is obviously a barrier to sort of an established company that wants to set up a new venture. Do they have to set up a new company that then becomes sort of a new entrant, or are there plans to change the rules there?
I was just talking about this with a colleague who's actually managing the DPS, because I'm not the expert on the DPS, and he was just commenting on this. And today the rule is 15 years, and there's some companies which have complained about that number. I frankly don't know if the number will change or evolve. I cannot say. I am sure we'll do lessons learned and we'll collect all the feedback received. Today is 15 years, and it was agreed jointly with Brussels, and that's the number that's referred to in terms of you have to be less than 15 years in the market to be able to apply. Everything can evolve. I cannot comment more than that on this one, because I don't know. I'm not the expert to the end of the.
It's obviously a question on the table at the moment, and so
I'm sure you can raise it further, and I will raise it internally for you.
Yeah. Okay. No questions appearing. I wanted to come up. We talked earlier about the sort of one of the aspects of the EOcafe that I try to recognize is that we have people on here who are even new to the sector. They may be coming from adjacent sectors. They may be looking at using data. They may be coming new into space, and are unfamiliar with sort of the very complex institutional setup that we have. So a little bit provocatively, the Union or the Commission have set up a second space agency in EUSPA, Space Programs Agency. Now, I'm sure you work with them closely. Can you just explain a little bit the relationship between ESA and EUSPA and what the different roles are, so that people can understand a little bit better?
Yes, sure. I mean, we have a very clear mandate for EUSPA on Copernicus. I'm not talking Galileo here, I'm talking Copernicus, and the mandate of the regulation is clearly on user uptake and also market development and communication and market and promotion of the program. And that's where we are started to work with EUSPA. In fact, I had a bilateral meeting with EUSPA a few months ago, and we are teaming up forces in terms of doing studies on the economic perspective of the markets. The advantage of working with USPA also for us in EO, in ESA, is that they know markets that we don't know. They know the sector of transport because they have a long and very strong experience in navigation. And we can absolutely benefit in the collaboration from that. So the idea is, for the moment, we're looking at how to best team up on issues which are directly related to the mandate that they have, which is the one associated to user uptake, of course, and to promotion of they're doing probably things which are new master initiatives. So we're looking also at things where we can really promote the program at best. And of course, in a longer, medium term, we still have to see how to consolidate further our collaboration.
Yeah, okay. And in relation to the EO sector, USPA have, I mean, they were formed out of the Galileo program. They were originally the support office, the joint undertaking, if we go back far enough. So are there lessons that we can learn from what they've done on Galileo for Earth observation?
I'm sure there are, and that's part of the exercise I'd like to launch also with my colleague, the Director of Navigation. And I think also the integration of the technologies related to navigation and EU are more and more needed. Just thinking again at the security context, if you look at the maritime monitoring, you see the oil spill with remote sensing data, but you see whether the boat is also with the navigation tools. So I'm convinced that there are a lot of synergies that we can exploit there, and also see how we can work best, of course, with them. I see there are lots of questions arriving. Shall we look into those as well before we close? Or?
Yeah. I mean, they're coming in just on the subject that I was picking up.
Shall I start with the first one that it's appeared, or how do you want to proceed on this?
What I'd like, if Mark wants to join in, and so the question around USPA.
So the question around CUSA is Rainer. No, wait. No, how do you see the interaction between ESA and USPA in the future for harmonizing the market view?
It's Mark Tondrio, our chairman.
Yeah, no, but indeed you answered it before. You raised a question, so it's okay.
I think I answered that one.
I thought.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, Neta.
And then
the one of Marcus Probeck, I think I've also answered. For the moment, there's no plan to go beyond the 15 years, but I mean, some of the criteria will evolve and will be set different for the next stages of the tendering process. And for example, I was just told possibly some of the topics will be expanded, and so not excluded, but not a current firm plan yet to go beyond the 15 years. The interaction I've said. Yeah, hello.
Hi. Thanks for that answer. I just wanted to extend the question a bit, and actually I was targeting one step further. I mean, the point around the 15 years you answered perfectly well. My question would basically be, in the second round, do we assume correctly that this will be for entities established more than 15 years, but the other criteria like control and the ultimate beneficiaries and whatever is defined there as the criteria to see what's a European entity and whatnot, will in turn remain stable, and it's just going to be the 15 years that's the criterion to decide between the first and the second part of the call?
Marcus, from what I understand, is not so black and white. So it's not just the 15 years that today is questioned by some, and today it's 15 years, punto. We also got remarks from some companies which are dealing in the field of, I think it was a radiometer company that said that this is not yet inside the context that we're considering. So maybe in the future that could be expanded to other domains. Also, I understand that today we have a clear cut on how companies can be considered European or non-European, but this is not a firm thing forever. So I think some of the criteria, and today I don't know which one because I'm not enough inside the management of the DPS system for Copernicus contributing mission, can evolve and can be adjusted in the next stage. That's for sure still an option, and it's looked into by the colleagues.
Okay, thanks for the answer.
Well, then I see there is commercialization in Cube.
Rainer, yeah, let's
Yeah,
turn to Rainer. Rainer.
Yes, hi. Well, this question is for me because currently there are a lot of activities coming up from USPA, for example, and also when I see your programs like this planned scale up or the InCube that you just mentioned, or also some goals from like the Earthwatch with a more operational focus. So we see that it's getting more and more important, this commercialization. But for also in the discussion with my colleagues, it's not so clear where is the I would say the link between USPA and ESA, and where's the difference, and where is your focus, and yeah, where's the difference between these activities in the commercialization?
So the commercialization, I think for us in Earth observation is relatively easy and straightforward. We have InCube. InCube is a co-funding mechanism.
That's clear.
Nothing similar in EUSPA, which is a provision to support technology development or service development on the commercial sector, where ESA gives the expertise, gives a potential market to the companies, and gives somehow co-funding to an initiative. So for me, that's a mechanism which is quite straightforward in that respect, no overlap inside the Copernicus mandate of EUSPA with what they do. There were some gray zones, and I mentioned one, which was, for example, the one of the masters. We were doing for years Copernicus masters, and we're just now looking together with EUSPA and the Commission how we could renovate that scheme, but in that context, together with EUSPA and together with also my colleagues of commercialization, because that's something that cannot necessarily be done the way we've done it in the last 10 years. So there are areas where we are really looking to work together on commercialization. In Cube, I don't see an overlap with things which are done currently. We're also looking at Cassini and how to eventually streamline a collaboration with Cassini. But today, for what concerns the Copernicus field, we are trying more to enhance the synergies, and the potential synergies I see is, for example, in all the studies, and there have quite some budgets in the studies on looking at the potential economic sector to develop the commercialization, and those studies on the potential development of the economic sector, we're not doing so many. We don't know those sectors so well. We don't have the connection. So there we are trying to really create synergies with EUSPA, and that's the plans we have agreed recently, and we're trying to consolidate.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rainer. The next question in the chat is from Miriam Gonzalez. Miriam.
Hi, Ismeta, how are you? Nice to see you. It's a bit noisy here. Sorry, my colleagues are pretty noisy. I'm in the office today. So from my side, I have this question. So I was listening to you and you said certain things that are really important. I mean, how to know better the market, how to support the startups, how we can also take advantage of all the Copernicus programs. So my question is more related to where I work. Offer2 is a platform and marketplace. In the one, we have the knowledge, we have the open data, we have the commercial data also from different constellations. How can we support ESRIN to achieve the goals that they have?
You mean related to platforms? You want to know what we're doing in that context, for example?
More like a platform, like a private platform, a marketplace. How can we support you better? We're already participating in the Cassini challenges. We're already participating in the network of resources. Also, we're participating right now, discussing with ESA how can we support better certain startups. So I think that's kind of the beginning of the relations we are having with ESA, and we want to continue expanding all these relations.
ESA will have quite some budgets to be spent in the coming years on infrastructure in general development, distribution of the data to the users. I can mention you a figure which is of the order of 1.5 billion for the next few years on different programmatic elements, which my colleague Nick Hanowski, who is the head of the ground segment and infrastructure part, will have to spend in terms of calls. On what? Basically, on one side, on calls related to what we call Destiny, is the money we got delegated from the Commission to develop a dedicated platform. So an expertise that you might have in the company related to platform development could be very relevant potentially in that context. We will have calls. not only we will develop a platform for the Commission with EUMETSAT and ECMWF in the Destiny context, but we're also trying to have a program which is on the ministerial plate, which is called Digital Twin of the Earth, where we amplify the work of Destiny as a complementary R&D activity, integrating the data sources into modeling and forecast. Just today, I was with some colleagues here who were showing me the demonstration of two activities, which are two science activities, one on hydrology and one on Antarctica, that we've been doing to demonstrate the value of integrating science data into that platform. So their expertise, like I assume the one you have, could be interesting. Another area where we are developing platform and where you can contribute, and it's also quite interesting, is we've developed a dedicated COVID platform, the COVID-19 one, which was basically quite rashly done with over 30 companies in Europe, and it was extremely successful. And that was the result of a call we did to show how Earth observation data could support the COVID crisis. And that dashboard, which was supposed to last a few months, it's still alive and it's still expanded for 2 years with all the companies that have contributed. And we've also expanded to a collaboration with NASA and JAXA. So those industries who have developed that platform are now also benefiting of expanding that activity to an international collaboration and international visibility. So I think there, what I like to say is that you will have quite a number of opportunities in that context in various different programs and programmatic lines. Sometimes the difficult part is to know where should I look at. But there, I think what you can have is always a connection and an advice with ESA staff. If you don't find the right one, come to me. I'll put you in contact. But certainly on the end, you're talking about the most relevant team is the one under the team of Nick. We're also finalizing right now a data access contract. We're negotiating currently for the data access to Copernicus missions for the next few years. So there are a variety of different ways to contribute to various activities, but in the end, they have to be all coherent, those ones. So if you manage to gain a contract in one of those, you have quite some potential in other areas, I would say.
Just for those on the call, we had Nick joined me in the EOcafe at the end of June. Yeah. It is recorded, so if you haven't heard that cafe, if you weren't able to attend, you can listen to it in the recording. And Nick was particularly talking about Destination Earth and the activities around that. Question from Tony Sefton. Tony, how are you?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and thanks, Simonetta, for an interesting talk. A long time ago, when I was working at Airbus, one of the missions I was involved with for a while was ALICE. And I know that since its launch, it's been very successful in producing data, which is now being assimilated into numerical weather prediction models. I understand that there's been some thought given to follow on. So I was just wondering if you could say anything more about that, what the expectation is at the Ministerial and how the specifications might have changed a little since the original ALICE mission.
Sure, Tony, thanks. Yes, ALICE was an Explorer mission developed in Futurio. It took 17 years to develop it, very difficult technology to validate, but at the end, very successful story, I would say, because it's been flying since 2018. All the weather models and prediction have been improved thanks to the ALICE data. I was today with ECMWF director, and she's one of the testimonials of how data from ALICE have improved dramatically the medium weather forecast, but also all the Met offices, not only in Europe, but around the world, are using the ALICE data currently. So from that, we decided to prepare a proposal. It's called ALICE 2. It's a proposal on the table of ministers that we've done hand in hand with EUMETSAT, and we use the model of the collaboration on the meteorological mission that we have been successfully developing for all the manned missions with EUMETSAT, whereas ESA starts and develops, the plan is to develop 2 satellites for Eolus 2 for 2028. We fund about 30%, so we start now, and then the decision for the complementary funds from EUMETSAT will come in 25. And what I would like to say, it's becoming an operational mission. So from a science mission, the success story is that this is becoming an operational mission, which will of course support requirements and will also have some sort of evolution in terms of technology. This is, I think, extremely relevant, not only for the Met offices, but also for the industry. In fact, it's a program which has been showing quite some interest from the industrial side, from different countries in Europe, and we hope that will be really fully subscribed next week.
Okay, yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, so last question, appropriate to the chairman. I like the question, Mark. I think it's something we could discuss for quite some time. Please.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be too long here, but just to take the opportunity to raise a question which we already discussed some years ago, I think, together with ESA and also with ESA, but which could be perhaps more relevant now by looking at the level of investment, commercial investment coming into the Earth observation sector. And the question is the quality labeling. And the question is, don't you think, Simonetta, that ESA could play a bigger role in qualifying validating the quality of some applications based on Earth observation services, and that could avoid some overselling actions that we can see more and more frequently, and which at the end can be very detrimental for some sectors, because it can spoil the image of Earth observation in this sector. So it's something we would like to get your first view, but perhaps we are.
Maybe there, Mark, I think you have good examples of ESA having done this. Maybe it's not done enough, certainly, but I think of the example of the collaboration that we have with the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank. We've been launching projects with those 2 banks with the aim to promote the role of European companies in support of projects with them. And that's like a rubber stamping, because those companies, and I won't make names, who have worked on projects which were demonstration projects with ESA, with the World Bank or the Asian Development Bank, have been then able, and that's thanks to this rubber stamping, so this quality check that was guaranteed by ESA to the type of data, to the type of services produced, they managed to win contracts for longer term. So I think that's already partially done. Similar thing I would say it's also done in relation to some of the Copernicus services. I think of the land service, for example, where you have some companies which have been doing demonstration activities with ESA. They got sort of the quality check, the rubber stamping that they could do that type of activity, either if it was done between ESA and EEA first, or between ESA and some, I don't know, land authority in one of the member states, or an agriculture plan or proposal. But those rubber stamping exercises are already partially done for the projects we run. Maybe we should find a way to do it more, or to organize it better. Not on an ad hoc basis, but it's already something that we are partially implementing.
Okay, thank you.
To have a reference with a customer is extremely valuable for the companies, extremely supportive in markets, especially when the services are new. And even today, mostly what we're talking about is new. So maybe some form of scheme which is not about the projects which are running, but which are about other activities, something which can bring a quality standard to services, I think could be very, very valuable. It's something that we've talked a lot with Steve Coulson in the past. Steve's was on the call. So maybe that's something that we could resurrect as a subject. Simonetta, I think we've reached the end of the time. We're taking you over your hour, and I'm sure you've got a lot of further calls to make and things to do.
I see also that Simon has further clarified some of the points related to the DPS and Copernicus, which is probably useful because, yes, one thing I didn't say, it's for the category 2 is for established companies where this step 1, it's meant to be supporting emerging companies, and he has clarified some of the requests that were asked through the chat.
Okay, excellent. So it remains to thank you very much for joining us today in the EOcafe. It's been a real pleasure linking Europe with Esrin. It's great to see you and talk with you on this subject. It's a big subject. We maybe we'll come back further sometime after in the new year when things are clearer and have a further. Try to have a further discussion, but obviously the dialogue is something that we look to sustain.
Thank you to you for this opportunity, and congratulations for the 50th EOcafe. I was quite lucky to come at the 50th round.
Yes, it worked out because we had to postpone from last time, and so it was curious the way it worked out to be the 50th. But yes, it was great. We'll have to sort out cakes later another time. So if you have, I don't know if you want to make any last comments or.
No, I'll be in touch with your community and with you.
Yeah.
We'll follow up from the ministerial. If you want an update next year, we can arrange something and see where we're going from there. And thank you again for your support, and your community has been very active in helping us to consolidate what we're looking forward to get subscribed next week. So anything you can do still to help us, it's welcome.
we look forward to hearing the positive outcome of all this hard work, and we really appreciate the partnership with ESA. I think it works very well. So it remains just to say that in 2 weeks' time we'll have the next EOcafe. We've got DG INTPA coming to talk about us, international partnerships. Stefano Tarabella will tell us about the different initiatives going on around the world and how industry can be part of those and how to prepare for those. So that's normal time, normal place, Thursday, in 2 weeks' time at 4 o'clock. Hope to see many of you then. At that point, we end the formal part of the EOcafe. Anyone who wants to say anything, please just open up your microphone and join in.